got to tell you, I'm very fired up because we are on stage, as Stephen said, with two of the fiercest warriors for the Jewish people. Let's give them another round of applause. Michael and Aviva, thank you so much for coming. To start us off, I think it would be really helpful for all of us to understand how we got to this point. And Michael, let me start with you, because I think it's safe to say, before October 7th, the Jewish world and Israel were not your main activities. How did that all change?
October 7th happened, and the reaction and the shock and the horror, I'd say it took me about 36 hours for it to really sink in, and it was just a primal sort of, reaction to defensive reaction. It was a sort of fight or flight situation. You know, I grew up in New York City. I'm what you would call a everything bagel with cream cheese lox, onions, and capers. I don't, because they say bagel and lox Jews. I don't think that exists. I don't think anybody just eats the bagel and just lox. So, yeah, and then, and here we are.
Well, we're grateful. We all have to think about that, the bagels and the lox. Got to think about that more.
I mean, does anyone have bagel with just lox? It's always something else besides lox. Right? Unless you're on a diet, which it's got to be a toasted bagel or something. It can't just be a plain bagel with just lox. It's kind of dry.
2 Jews, 3 opinions. We can keep talking about it after this. Aviva, obviously you're more ingrained in the Jewish world, but that doesn't necessarily dictate that you were going to become one of the most important voices on social media for us. How did that happen for you?
So first of all, big thank you to AJC for inviting me to be here. It's a great honor and pleasure. I used to be the speechwriter for Israel at the United Nations, and there's a lot to say about working at the United Nations, working for Israel at the United Nations, which is an institution that is notorious for its bias against Israel. And one question that I still get asked by a lot of people is, why does Israel participate? Why would you voluntarily belong to an organization that constantly demonizes and delegitimizes? And more than that, you have to pay to be a member in good standing at the United Nations. I know, it's very hard to think about. So why do it at all? And as much as I get asked that question, that was never once a conversation inside of the delegation, because there's a mentality that says Israel has every right to participate in and contribute to global affairs. And I'll say it again. Israel has and the Jewish people have every right to participate and contribute to our communities and our society and our country, and we should accept nothing less than that. So the mentality that I bring to this work is that I call bullshit. None of this, I swore before you, lost the bet. None of this is normal or acceptable, and I will not for 1 minute of one day allow it to stand. I will not tolerate a world that treats us as if we deserve this, as if we deserve October 7th, as if we deserve the outbreak in anti-Semitism, as if it's normal or acceptable that even one person would be a hostage. No, absolutely not. I'm not accepting a world where Jews have to hide their identity, especially young Jews. We live in a world of identity politics where you're encouraged to identify as anyone, wear any flag, any pin, and the one thing you can't safely identify as is a Jew, forget it. Bullshit also. And I've had it with people that will speak with great sympathy about dead Jews, but won't take any meaningful action to safeguard living Jews. That's what actually matters. Because to be clear, we don't want anybody's pity. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for this to be fixed. And so if you don't care to fix it, we don't care to hear any more empty statements.
So I have a feeling, Michael, that you're over the BS too. And let me ask you about that, because you see so much hate and misinformation on social media every single day. What is the one thing or a couple of things that you just cannot get your head around that you see that really get you riled up out of everything that you see out there?
That's a good question, because I see all sorts of stuff. You know, a lot of people ask me about the hate on social media. Like, I honestly could give 2 shits about the hate on social media. I don't articulate myself, speak on behalf of those people. I speak on behalf of Jews. I speak on behalf of Omer from New York City, from Long Island. I speak on behalf of the Jews. I speak on behalf of Israel. I speak on behalf of the anti-Semitism, you know, and as far as the hating and all that stuff, like it's like I'm like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix with the hating. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't deter me. It won't affect me. It won't deter me. It's never affected me, and it certainly won't affect me post October 7th. As far as the one thing, it's hard. I mean, I get death threats every day, which is nothing. Honestly, it's nothing. And you know, all the other things that, you know, are just, you know, like the girl on October 8th in New York at the rally, the pro-Palestinian rally that was going like this to the Israeli, that was very memorable for me because I just couldn't believe that. And then to see the posters being ripped down, I didn't see it first in New York City, but growing up in New York City, being a proud New Yorker, when I was seeing posters of, you know, the hostages and the Beebus baby being defaced and ripped down, I just equated it to after 9/11, because after 9/11 we saw missing people posters all over New York. You would never see them ripped down or questioned in any way, shape, or form. So those are the sort of things that, I mean, really sort of incited me.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to add to that?
It's very similar to my first answer, which is I open up social media and what constantly goes through my head for whatever I read is like hell, that'll be the last word on that, and then I tweet something. That's why I tweet so much.
I think we've all experienced that feeling. Let me ask you, because you mentioned specifically the Jewish world, right? Speaking for Jewish voices. And I think there's a concern in our community that all of those on social media that are standing up for the Jewish people, especially Jews, are speaking to ourselves, are speaking to the bubble. What's your take on that? Do you think that's the case, or do you think that have you personally experienced changing hearts and minds? What's your read on that situation?
You know, I have a very, very vast platform, and I'm thankful for that now more than ever. You know, who I'm speaking to and who it's getting through to, I spend too much time trying to contrive that and worry about that. I just think it's a waste of time. Obviously, I think, you know, I spoke to somebody in the social media, Twitter and Facebook, and they said, you know, your audience is the same, you know. But I just can't spend too much time on it. I just try to do as much as I can do, be as loud and as aggressive as I possibly can, because so much of what we see on social media, and social media is what it is, you know, so much of that towards Jews and Zionists is so aggressive. That's why I try to be aggressive back. And this is an aggressive time. This is not a passive time. We're in a fucking war, and Jews, what it means to be Jewish is changing every single day. You know, how it's going to end, I don't know, but our identity and how we're perceived in the world is changing every single day, and I just try to you know, not focus on myself and focus on the people that are, you know, really still going through it and have went through it.
So this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about and actually researching as well. When I'm not on X, then I co-run a nonprofit called Boundless, and we look at some of the harms of social media. Thank you to the one person who knows my nonprofit. It's very nice. Thank you all. One of the things we're trying to understand is what is exactly happening on social media below the surface of what we're seeing. And there's so much that's taking place in addition to the echo chambers that Michael described. So first of all, the rule on social media is if it enrages, it engages. So the things that are going to perform the best are the things that are really divisive for us as human beings, that preclude us from being able to be in conversation and build relationships. So the most angry, vitriolic, hateful, disgusting, vile things are what are going to be amplified. I always liken it to the Colosseum in ancient Rome. It's a blood sport, and you have some people that are fighting it out in the middle, and then you have all the crowds lustily cheering for it. That is not a forum to change hearts and minds and to build relationships. So that's part one. The second is that there's very clear algorithmic manipulation. You might have read news stories about TikTok. There's studies that have been done that show that TikTok is suppressing certain content, mostly related to China, and it's amplifying other content, content that maligns the United States. So it's clearly what's in the interest of the Chinese government. Then you have the bots, inauthentic activity. The estimates are that 26% of the conversation on social media are robots. There's a 1 in 4 chance that whomever you are currently fighting with on social media is a robot, and they will always have the last word. I actually it's not never, but almost never read my comments or my DMs because my baseline assumption is you're a Hamas or you're a robot. There's nothing to engage with.
And you should call them robots. Sometimes they'll be like, I don't speak to robots, which makes me crazy because I'm actually speaking to a robot.
I am.
But I will tell them I don't speak to you, robot.
That's exactly what I mean. Sometimes I go,
which is so nuts.
Sometimes I want to go, like hell, that's the last word, AG201C418. And I'm like, well, maybe I don't have to engage with that particular one. And then you have foreign intervention. There's also studies showing that other governments are playing here. The World Economic Forum puts out a study every January where they look at the greatest threats to the world in the short term in 2 years and the long term, 10 years. This year, for the first time, there were 2 new things that made that list for the short-term threats to the world. One is misinformation campaigns, and the other is disinformation campaigns. This is a problem that plagues us, but it's actually a problem of countries and societies in the international community. Half of the global population is going to go to the polls this year, and there's a lot at play in terms of why to run disinformation campaigns and how to sway public opinion. So when we're thinking about what's happening on social media, we have to look beyond the surface of what do I tweet, what do I say, and try to address some of those deeper level problems.
Absolutely, that's really insightful, thank you. Speaking of beyond social media, let's step away from social media for one moment. Michael, you are part of a small but mighty group of Jewish actors, comedians, entertainers who are being vocal, but you've been critical of Jews in the industry who are not speaking out. And I think many of us are frustrated. Why aren't more celebrities speaking with moral clarity? Can you give us a sense, is there more support behind the scenes? What is holding people back? What can we do to get more people who are famous to speak out?
Well, I've spoken out against them as a whole because I resent them. I resent my profession who infamously, iconically, going back to when Marlon Brando had the woman at the Academy Awards, to every other actor talking about, climate change, penguins dying, LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, pigeons dying, and everything under the sun. And to see through this period, particularly during the awards ceremonies in January and February, not one person said the word hostages. After the Emmys, I woke up the next morning and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was associated with these people because I know that so many of prominent Jewish actors, specifically Jewish actors and actresses who've made careers off of being the neurotic Jew and the stereotypical Jew and leading with their Judaism, they don't have to be as bombastic as I am, but just to not say anything simply about the hostages. It could be free the hostages and whatever else you want. I don't know. There isn't something going on behind the scenes. The people who have said something have said something. It's 240-something days now. If they haven't said something now, they're not going to say something. I don't know why. I think some of them are free Palestine people. I think some of them are totally misinformed, and I think some of them are scared. And whatever it is, it's unacceptable, especially knowing that artists, like I said, have spoken out and speak out every single year. And next year it'll be something else. It'll be some agenda that people will talk out on, and it just somehow the only thing that got mentioned at the Academy Awards was a Jewish director who made a Holocaust movie refuting his Judaism, and a bunch of people clapping for it. This shit was embarrassing to me.
Yeah. So well said. It was embarrassing to us as well. Aviva, I also want to ask you about your expertise because you're a warrior on social media, but you're also an educator, as has come up. And tomorrow, AJC is launching our 2024 opinion survey of Jews in the United States. And I want to highlight a couple of stats for you and get your reaction. More than 1 in 5 American Jews said they had received 0 formal education about Israel. And those who reported no education about Israel were least likely to say they felt more connected to Israel since October 7th, followed by those who categorized their education as weak. In contrast, 62% of those who characterized their education about Israel as strong said they felt more connected to the Jewish state after October 7th. So to me, this says, yes, we need to educate the world about anti-Semitism and about Israel, but we have a lot of work to do in our own backyard. So where do we start?
Yeah, it's critically important. We do this research at Boundless also. We're doing a lot of public opinion polling as it relates to the war, as it relates to anti-Semitism, with a focus on speaking to non-Jewish audiences. There are 2 things that correlate with support for Israel. There are 2 things that correlate with standing up for anti-Semitism. One is age, and the other is education. But I could just say education twice, because the reason we have an age problem is because younger people either don't have the education, or because whatever affiliation they have, we have too many Jewish institutions that decided they're not going to talk about or educate about Israel, which now, to our enormous detriment. We saw this even a few years ago, that for young people that said that Israel was a frequent topic of conversation in their homes, 85% feel connected to Israel. For those that said that it wasn't ever spoken about, it's fewer than half, 45% say that they feel connected to Israel. And it's equally important when we're talking about non-Jewish audiences and anti-Semitism. We did a study that found 2/3 of non-Jewish Americans do not know what the word Zionism means. Of the ones that do know, so the 1/3 that do know, more than 90% will say that anti-Semitism is a problem in this country, and more than 80% will say that they feel that they must personally do something in order to address anti-Semitism. So it gives you a sense of just how critical it is that we begin to rethink how we educate about Israel to all different audiences.
Well, we have a lot of work to do on a lot of fronts, it seems. I want to ask you both one final question, because we believe at AJC that you're not alone in this work, and you've been incredible, but there's a lot for all of us to do on social media and in the other areas that we mentioned. What's your charge to everyone in this room? There's something keeping you going. What can keep us going to join in this fight? How can we help?
Do not accept anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism the same way we collectively as Jews haven't accepted and we've stood up for every single thing under the sun. Do not accept it. It's not okay. It's not to be normalized. It's not to be accepted in any way, shape, or form. And to continue, I could say that I have educated myself and armed myself with so much knowledge and history and armed myself with the confidence. Because the more confidence you have and the more understanding you have of who we are, where we've come from, where we're going, and all those things, the more you can stand up. It's helped me enormously. I mean, I have been in a humongous education in the last 6 or 7 months, and it gives me the confidence to be able to speak up and to stand up and, you know, and to fight the way I do. Because it's like I said, being Jewish is changing, and you know, being recognized as a Jew is changing. And you know, for a lot of us that are adults in here, we're fine with that. But the younger people, you know, going forward, you know, when the dust settles, it's going to be like, what kind of Jew are you? Are you this kind of Jew or that kind of Jew? And people need to be comfortable to say, you know, that they're a proud, strong Jew, and if need be, this is why. All right.
We talk a lot about what we got wrong since October 7th, but I want to tell you the most important thing that we got right, and it's actually the most important thing that matters. And that's, over the last 8 months, we've gotten to see the character of the Israeli and Jewish people in a way that we study and research and poll and do all these things, but we got to see it in real life. What do I mean by that? It started on October 7th, when you saw that once Israelis understood the magnitude of the attack and that our enemy was preying on the weakest members of society, in the way that they rushed towards the danger. Whether or not they were in the army, whether or not they had a uniform or a weapon, they went south in huge numbers, and a lot lost their life, but there's also stories of heroism. And then we saw tens of thousands of Israelis that flew home. At what is really the most dangerous time since Israel's existence, they went home to be together. And then we saw Israeli civil society rise up in a way we have never seen before to take care of the needs of evacuees and survivors and one another, people in reserves and the army and so forth. It was unprecedented. Around the world, you saw global Jewry raise phenomenal, really phenomenal sums of money. Every El Al flight was stuffed to the gills with duffel bags, with equipment for the Army. I mean, was it to Army standard? Did they need it? Did it matter? We were sending it. That was the most important part of it. Not important, we have to send it. And the public campaigns to free the hostages, the Shabbat tables, the bill. I mean, we have been absolutely incredible. What you have seen for the first time in the last 8 months is an understanding that we are in this together. We've seen the character of who we are, and it's magnificent. So what motivates me and what should motivate all of you is to be worthy of the people that we belong to, because they deserve the very, very best. And if I may end just with one thing that's always in my mind, which is that what the late Rabbi Sachs said. He said, there are always going to be people who look down upon Israel and the Jews, and the only response to that is to walk with your head held high so that they have no choice but to look up in order to be able to see you.
Well, thank you both for doing exactly that and for modeling that for our community and the Jewish people. Thank you so much for coming. We're so grateful. Thank you.